Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, How to Drive Retail Sales with Smart Content, sponsored by Aprimo, provider of agile marketing solutions for CMOs. I'm Chris Rand, research analyst for the eTail event series in WVR Digital, and I'll be your moderator for today's discussion. Before we dive in, I'd like to bring your attention to the console in front of you. The windows or widgets laid out on the screen are customizable, meaning you can move these around to maximize, minimize, or reposition them to fit whatever device you're using to connect with us. Pop into one of the widgets labeled Resource Center to directly download a Philips case study from Aprimo and some content from the eTail team, including the latest eTail East agenda and Enterprise Retail Mid-Year Trends Report. There are no forms to fill out, just pure content. And if you haven't bought your ticket yet for the upcoming event in Boston next month, click on the banner to register you and your team. We're going to try and save 15 minutes or so at the end of today's discussion for a Q&A session. So at any point, feel free to submit questions using the portal. There will also be polls included in today's webinar. So once they pop up on your screen, select your response and hit submit. We'll handle the rest and tally the results. Now, I'd like to introduce you to our panelists for today's discussion. We have Shish Sridhar, Industry Solutions Director in Retail at Microsoft, Jeffrey Parrish, Director, Industry Solutions and Marketing in Retail and Consumer Goods at Aprimo, and Savanta Nilsson, Product Marketing VP in Retail at Aprimo. As we take a look at the demographics from Aprimo's recent study, we'd like to open the discussion with a polling question for the audience. So, everyone, please be ready to respond. Over the past year, how has your organization's need for content evolved? Please select one. It has increased significantly. There has been some increase. It has remained the same. There has been some decrease, or it is limited or negligible. Okay. Interesting. Jeffrey, what are your thoughts on these results?
These results aren't surprising to me at all. In the last few years, we've seen increased demand for brand interaction from customers. Social media marketing has increased the frequency at which we need to provide content. Search rankings are based on a combination of SEO, content, social media mentions, and activity. And storytelling has become very important in terms of customer engagement. So all of this together, as well as many other factors, have created this major spike in the amount of content that's required in order for retailers and brands to stay visible and relevant in the landscape.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jeffrey. So moving on, I'd like to go ahead and move on to our panel questions. So in a recent survey by eTail and Aprimo, 59% of enterprise retailers surveyed claim their need for content has increased significantly over the past year. As new channels continue to emerge, how can retailers manage brand experiences consistently across channels? Savanta, would you like to start this one?
Sure. Actually, I think it's a very good question, and it's indeed a challenge that we see quite a lot in the market today. And I think it really ties back to content strategies, and what I mean by that is how do we create, how do we manage and deliver content? And some of you may think or may agree that this is probably a paradox, because if there's one thing we have seen for the last years is a lot of investment in content technologies. And just think about WCM, or Web Content Management, e-commerce platforms, or mobile apps technologies, and so forth. But I think they tend to be very locked to a specific channel. And this has, I think in my book and what we see, created a lot of silos. And in order to create those consistent experiences, we see a lot of handover within organizations. So there's a lot of content moved within the organizations, basically. And a lot of questions that our transformation or digital transformation partners or customers are raising is basically, all right, what's the best way of unlocking all this content that's stored in all those silos? Essentially what that means is basically to create almost like a content hub that actually sits behind every customer-facing system and lock in the whole content creation process into this technology where the content is created in-house or your agencies or your product teams or maybe other systems. And from that point, basically orchestrate all those channels or also new channels arising. Obviously, this will require that we take a channel agnostic approach to content. And I think that's one of the key fundamentals that we need to think about. It's like, how do we manage content? I think next to that, I would say, if we do it this way, we can actually start mapping ahead a little bit what type of content we need and start aligning customer journeys with content strategies to create contextual good experience across multiple channels. So that will actually make your brand experience consistent across those channels, but I could also argue and say that it will be more effective as well. Right.
I agree, and I think one of the things that Swan pointed out was really that the consistency of the user experience is extremely important, and because of the omni-channel world, what we're really noticing is that customer journeys are really moving across channels, and that expectance of that consistent experience, as well as the same content being available across channels, becomes more important. The other aspect that a lot of retail and brands are really looking at is to deliver that consistent information and content across channels, whether a shopper is moving from a physical channel to a digital channel, is really to look at, how can they integrate all the back-end systems so that they can have a consistent data and content experience across all of these channels.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. I'll also add that I think it's very important to make sure that as a retailer, you have a very defined strategy around acquisition and retention in terms of your messaging, because with each of the existing channels and with every new channel that comes in, there's a need to identify where that channel fits within your marketing strategy. Is there an opportunity for conversion through that channel, or is this channel better suited to satisfy awareness objectives or customer engagement? So knowing where that channel fits will allow retailers to make sure that they're keeping their messaging consistent and relevant.
Okay, thanks everyone. For our next question, customers increasingly expect retail brands to engage with them using smart content that is personalized based on their tastes and experiences. What are the best strategies for retailers to achieve this level of personalization, and how does aggregating customer data come into play? Tish, what do you think?
One of the things that I think, trying to achieve a level of personalization, what's different today is the fact that there is a lot of data available. Unlike in the past where most retail brands relied on their proprietary data, what's different is there is a lot of public data available, especially from social sources, demographic data, weather data, and so on. And retailers and brands can actually go into really using that combination of data, look at how is weather data impacting decisions to buy, how is demographic data impacting decisions to buy, on what products are driven by specific influencers. So really taking that combination of data and creating micro-segmentations of the customers and then looking at the micro-segmentations to deliver more personal and relevant content is essentially what retail and brands are looking at, to say we can go beyond the broader segmentations, use that combination of public and proprietary data to create these micro-segmentations, and as a result become more relevant and personal. So that combination of data is really driving a new way of engaging with customers across channels, and also helping brands to say, what channels is most relevant for specific microsegmentations and really going in that direction?
Yeah, and I definitely agree with what she said about being more relevant than personal. There's a creep factor when it comes to personalization and marketing that retailers have to be very careful of. It's more about using the customer data to gain insights in order to provide your customers with relevant content. So again, it's more about the insights, not so much just about the data. Knowing your customer, understanding their interests, their style, purchasing behaviors in order to provide them with content that they can engage with. In many ways, it's almost like we're dating our customers. So, maybe we suggest a new Thai restaurant because we know they like spicy foods versus sending them a text message that lists out all of the restaurants they've been to in the last 2 weeks. And suggesting that we go there, because at that point we're more like a stalker. So we definitely want to be very careful in not crossing that line, using the data that we know about them to present them with relevant content.
Okay, that's really interesting. So we move on to our next slide. So compared to retailers' marketing spends in 2016, what are the channels, devices, and strategies retailers are prioritizing? What are they seeking to accomplish within those channels? Svante, did you want to start with this one?
Yeah, let me take a stab on that one. I think what I'd like to do is answer a little bit from the shift of the questions that I've been receiving the last year. Let's be honest and let's be fair. And I think a lot of retailers today, they have already established a pretty good omni-channel footprint, if you wish. I think the race to the channel, to be there, getting the right content out there on time and so forth is an ongoing exercise, obviously. But sort of winning that touch point and be there is something that most retailers, I'd say, have more or less under control. I think we get more and more questions on, all right, now I got this. How do I monetize this? So I think we've seen a shift from like winning the touch point into more winning the business, really. Yeah. So it's more about the impact than anything else. So whereas we got a lot of questions about shopping experiences and stuff like that, we actually get a lot of questions as well on product experience. How do we differentiate our products in a world where people are just coming in, and it has to have a very short time span, and we have to be able to sort of grab the attention and convert that customer directly, right? So questions such as, how do I merge rich lifestyle-oriented or storytelling content with more informative, data-driven content, maybe more specification, structured content, and making that experience completely seamless. And if you think about this, those type of content angles can actually be on different channels. So we would have maybe a blog or a Pinterest where actually you have a lifestyle-oriented content, and you want to be able to sort of connect and align that content, that channel towards my storefront, for instance. So I think that's a lot of conversations we see is like, how do I make sure I differentiate my product offerings, my product experiences now when I have all those channels out there, basically.
One of the aspects that I see that's transforming really in thinking of channels is really looking at all of the touch points in the customer journey and not really looking at those touch points as silos, but really saying, what's the next best action? What's a typical journey look like? What are the different touch points that customers would typically go through in that buying process, and delivering content through those touch points in a consistent manner is really what a lot of retailers are looking at. And from that perspective, I'm seeing a lot of transformation happening in terms of SEO and SEM being one aspect of it, but then there's this big shift that is happening where a lot of brands are also looking at conversation as a platform, being able to engage customers using messaging platforms, being able to predict what that next step is, what content should they deliver to move the customer to the next step in the journey, to be able to shorten the loop from consideration to purchase. So really looking at customer journeys in a transformational way and what content is delivered at the right time to move customers on. So that is another aspect that a lot of retailers are looking at, brands are looking at as well.
Yeah, and to add what Svante and Shisha said, there's a major operational piece to this. So while the focus is remaining on being omnichannel in both your messaging and from a supply chain perspective, in order to do that, there's a need to integrate and consolidate your technologies and data. So you have to ensure that you have the appropriate tech stack to support the execution of these types of strategies. So there's definitely capturing the micro moments, the internal operational infrastructure piece of it, and then building strategies around your omnichannel messaging.
Thank you. Okay, let's open it up for another polling question to the audience. How many different aspects or variables of personalization does your company use to target consumers? Is it none, 1 to 2, 3 to 4, or 5 or more? Okay. Looks like we have a lot of selectors of 5 or more. Shish, did you want to share some thoughts on these results?
Yeah, I think this is kind of the 5 or more seems like a consistent thing that I've been seeing where from one perspective, what I'm seeing is the use of data is really increasing in terms of customer engagement and personalization, where using very little data has really made personalization not very effective, where the relevance of offers, relevance of recommendations is not very good as a result of that. And brands are really looking at, several aspects of personalization. One is, as I mentioned earlier, not just looking at things like what did you buy, what are your past purchases, what's your demographic data, but also look at very hyperlocal data. Information about what time of day is it, what's the season, what's the economy, and what's the impact of the economy on specific decisions that people make. So really using that combination and creating predictive models to be able to target consumers based on just-in-time as well as several other categories like demographics and the correlations between demographic data, weather data, and so on.
Okay, great. Thanks, Shish. Did anyone else want to chime in on that subject?
I think Shish covered it. I agree.
Great, thank you. All right, we'll move back to our panel questions. So today, brands need to craft their digital marketing content based on customers' perspectives in order to have meaningful interactions with them. How are retailers learning more about their customers to achieve this degree of personalization? Shish, do you want to start with this one?
Sure. One of the aspects I would say learning more about customers is there are several things that I've seen being used that is changing because of the availability of data. In the past was, I would say, primarily around the CRM data and information that brands knew about their customers. But today there is other aggregations that they can pull in to say, how can we become more relevant to the customers? How can we push out more relevant offers? And among these, I've seen one is, of course, the social data, like I mentioned earlier, where because of the explosion of data and the interesting correlations that can be learned from social data. For example, a very simplistic example could be football is trending in social, and as a result, we're noticing from our sales data that grocers are noticing that beer sales are spiking. Or the Lord of the Rings is trending on social media, and travel agents notice a spike in travel to New Zealand. So those are really discoveries that a lot of brands are making by combining data from social with their sales data to discover what are the influences, what are the interesting trends out there that is impacting specific categories of sales. It's not necessarily looking for your brand or looking for specific products in social data, but really looking at the interactions between what's trending and how it's impacting your business. And that's one of the ways that a lot of brands are making these discoveries. And as a result, are pulling in additional information. For example, if it is movies or sports or events that is impacting specific products and so on. In addition to that, they're creating micro-segmentations from all of the preference data mined from social. The public data that is available, things like demographics and weather, economic data, is also enabling them to get more personal, more relevant rather, with customers, because there's interesting correlations between unemployment rates and what brands are popular as a result, or the fluctuations in the dollar value and what that drives. So those are interesting correlations, and because the data is available, that information is again available to improve the relevance of what is targeted to specific microsegmentations. And that's an aspect that a lot of brands are looking at from a data perspective, and then figuring out what content can they drive to specific microsegmentations based on the behavioral data, based on the correlations from the public data as well as proprietary data.
Right. So, I mean, I agree with everything you say there, and I think especially your comments around the microsegmentation and creating this hyper-relevancy, basically. And I think relevancy or being relevant is actually key. I used to add a few comments from maybe from a content perspective and maybe a reality check. And I think a lot of things that we are seeing is, yes, we agree on this being the end goal, and we want to go there. But we also see, if you take a lot of larger retailers and brands that actually operate on global commerce scenarios, that actually relevancy starts with translated and localized content. And still trying to figure out how to, create effective brand and product variations for specific markets. How do I manage multi brand strategies and different variations in the actual products that's sold in different markets and so forth? I think it's also a key cornerstone. So basically almost like the foundation, right? So I think having that in place is also something that I see as very much as a foundation as well. Now, we talked about segmentation and getting that right, and I think creating those different audience segmentations across those markets is still very, very valid. And even if it's a little bit of bold, blunt instrument, you can see quite a good result. You're starting somewhere, and you actually start shifting the way you're approaching content and customers and how you actually bring in packaging products in specific markets. So I think coming back to aligning content-specific segments, and I think that's just a small wrap-up basically from a content perspective.
Okay, great. Jeffrey, did you have anything to add to that, or should we move to the next question?
I think we can move to the next question. I agree with all that's been said.
Okay, great. Now, User-generated content, user-curated content, customer ratings, and other contributions from customers are increasingly being incorporated into retailers' content strategies. Where does user-driven content belong within the greater marketing strategy? Svante, did you want to start?
Yeah, sure, I can take a stab. Well, actually, I think it's quite funny. And I think it was it 10, 15 years ago when reviews, ratings, forums, all this, arise, and we start talking about Web 2.0 technologies. And I think today, if you're looking at a typical storefront, a commerce experience, we see that reviews, ratings, those type of things are commonly used. So I think it's proven. I think it still has a place there, obviously. My feeling is it's typically used for end-of-funnel type of content, so it removes doubts and it creates trust just before someone wants to make the transaction, right? So going back to your questions, like how does it fit into marketing strategy? I would say that one of the biggest things, that one of the interesting things that's popping up now is actually start using user-generated content as part of a localization or a segmentation strategy. So using social influencers, for instance, to shape the content for specific consumer groups. So to give you an example, I was speaking to this large retailer the other day, and they have a number of influencers out there, and they engage with consumers on blogs, on Pinterest accounts, on Facebook and whatnot. And they actually create very, very targeted content, and sometimes very, very narrow target audiences as well. And the interesting thing here, I think, is that it really fosters a type of dialogue, right? And how we as a brand or a retailer choose to create that content or not, or we just consider this to be part of, this is just a new way we engage with our customers. It's just outside our scope, for instance, or we're just indirectly doing something. So I think definitely very interesting. And we've talked a lot about relevancy, and consumers will expect this. So I think definitely customers or brand ambassadors and social influencers will have a very important role in shaping a very targeted message going forward, basically.
I've been fascinated by... Sorry,
go ahead. Sorry. Okay, I just kind of wanted to drive home the idea. You go ahead, Sheesh.
Good. Sorry. I've been fascinated by user-generated content, primarily from an analytics perspective, where many brands are going into the storytelling aspect, where all the stories generated by consumers and brand ambassadors are excellent content that can be used effectively for engaging with customers, and they're very powerful means of communication as well. And from an analytics perspective, the aspect that I've been looking at is how can we identify the brand ambassadors, the influencers of the brand, using all of these social data, determine how viral is the messaging going, how much impact is it driving, really looking at that aspect, and then identifying the right content that can be used by the brand for engaging with customers. And that's an aspect that I've been extremely fascinated with. Sorry, Jeffrey, on to you.
No problem. Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity to create relevant content through customer insights. So, user-generated content that you get your hands on, I mean, it gives you an opportunity to really see what your customers feel about your brand and the level of interaction or engagement that they have with their brand. So it becomes more about, it becomes more than just using this content for your own marketing or to increase customer engagement. But, if you take the time to really look at the content that's being generated, get insights from it, it can help direct your product strategy. It can help your marketing strategy. Again, figuring out what's truly relevant to your customers and what you maybe want to do a little bit more of or less of.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, this is actually our last panel question. Looks like we have a lot of time left over for our Q&A at the end of this hour. So anyone who hasn't submitted a question yet, I encourage you to do so. Looks like we'll have enough time, so we look forward to seeing those. So our last question is, we're all witness to some of the most profound transformations in retail, turning marketing initiatives inside out, digitizing personalized experiences that once could only be achieved in a physical environment, and creating seamless shopping experiences that blur the lines between channels. What kinds of transformations will we see in 2018, and how will the most innovative retailers prepare? Shish, what do you think?
I think we are in a very fascinating time in retail, but there's a lot of transformation, and there's a lot of conversation around, brick and mortar versus online and which is better and things like that. But I think it is really about the whole transformation and going beyond and transcending channels, and not really having, brick and mortar is the way to go or online is the way to go, or online to say we need to have a brick and mortar channel. But what is increasingly happening is really that blend of physical and digital, where most retailers are kind of combining the capabilities across all of the digital channels and the physical capabilities as well in what's increasingly being known as phygital retail. And really having the abilities in the physical store to have all of the digital capabilities, the ability to have endless aisle, the ability to have the ability to go into a store, and if I don't find my size or color, to be able to quickly tap on the shelf and have it ordered from online to my home, or go online and be able to try something in the store, pick up something in the store, so have that seamless transfer between the online and digital worlds, and not really matter where you're completing the transaction. The other aspect that we're seeing a lot of as well is all of the artificial intelligence capabilities, the cognitive capabilities coming into play, and enabling commerce across different platforms, different capabilities where commerce could happen pretty much anywhere. The fascinating things that we're seeing is things like your camera on your phone could become a commerce channel because of cognitive capabilities, where if I see something that I like, I could point my camera at it, and the artificial intelligence capabilities will recognize the object, be able to identify it from the inventory of a retailer, and with a single click, I could purchase it or get more information about it, do a comparison of it, and so on. And that aspect of it is becoming very fascinating. And that's shifting into social channels as well, where if a product is mentioned on Twitter or Facebook or YouTube, being able to purchase it directly from that conversation or through that conversation with a single click, being able to identify products and apparel within videos, whether it's YouTube videos, videos on TV or on a movie screen, being able to purchase it right off the screen by identifying a product and linking it to a retailer to be able to, with a single click, have it delivered to your home. I think that aspect is also getting fascinating. The other aspect that we're also seeing is that whole thing about ambient commerce, where you have products automatically reordering refills or ordering products. For example, coffee machines, when you run out of coffee, will automatically trigger off an order through commerce channels. Printers being able to automatically reorder ink. So we're going to see those kind of things happening a lot, where you don't explicitly go to a website to be able to place an order, but you have appliances, really, refrigerators and coffee machines and printing machines automatically creating these commerce transactions. And you're able to buy across different channels. So I think there's this huge transformation that is happening, and that is constantly going to happen as new channels come in, new capabilities come in as well.
I absolutely agree. I mean, it's very exciting times, and there's tons of opportunity for retailers to be extremely innovative right now. To add to the idea of ambient commerce, I think there's going to be continued focus on, just simple convenient commerce. So really creating convenience for the customer, anticipating their needs, and making the transactions as seamless as possible. Marketers are really going to have to think outside of the box to come up with more convenient and innovative solutions for their customers. So there's a need to increase the focus on emerging technologies and services that exist that you can leverage for creating a more seamless and engaging customer experience or journey. I think that's going to be key, and the marketers or the retail marketers who really think outside of the box, step away from focusing strictly on product marketing or just brand messaging, and really think about how can we make it easy to achieve conversion with our customers.
No, I think, I echo everything that's been said. I think it's some valid, good points there. I think just so I'm not repeating too much, I think what I think is basically, if you look at creating, differentiating, innovative retail experiences, it's going to be a key driver going forward for being successful, basically. We know that typical content is driving many of those things and making it contextually aware with having the right data insights about customer journey. So we've spoken about that all together. One thing I like to raise, though, is how do we do this? I mean, how do we bring this up, basically? A lot of customers or a lot of retailers are doing it today already, but it tends to be very much like a one-off, a product launch or for a specific seasonal launch and so forth. And I want to raise sort of the industrialization of creating those experiences. How can we create this in a scalable, sustainable, and a cost-efficient way, basically spinning up really rich product and shopping experiences basically on the fly, where we have an aligned organization behind it, basically. So, it's also better off getting the stuff out there basically at the right time in the right context, basically. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone. So before we close the session, it looks like we have some time for the Q&A that I spoke of. We'll review some of the questions now, and I'll go ahead and direct them towards the panelists to respond. So if we take a look, we have one here. It says, can you share a good example of relevant content through user insight? So I'm wondering, Svante, do you have any examples you'd like to share?
But first, sorry, can you repeat the question again, just to make sure?
The question was, can you share a good example of relevant content through user insight?
That's a good question. I think I'm actually, the first thing that comes to mind is more from a go-to-market business strategy perspective. And I think we have a lot of brands that basically have a specific product that is positioned and sold in a certain way. So it actually has specific market price and so forth. When you're taking that to a new market, maybe to a complete different geography, we can actually reposition that market. But that actually means that a lot of the content, a lot of the ways we're doing around it, is actually repackaged the complete experience into something else. So maybe we can have a mainstream product appears as a luxury or a primary product somewhere else, basically. So I think understanding how this is working and the uptake, the insights basically from what's going on in the market is typical things that we see. But just top of mind, and maybe someone else has a better example. And
yeah, I think a good example is within kind of the sporting goods industry or within fitness and active wear. We're seeing a lot of brands that are actually creating apps or content around just being physically active in fitness and in the areas of interest that they know their customers have, and they're taking that approach in order to position their products. So based on, knowing the interests, the needs, the desires, the information that their customers are wanting, they're presenting content around that, but then they're also able to position and sell their products through the relevant content that they were able to create based on user insights or customer insights.
So one of the things that I've seen is a lot of brands are using predictive models to determine affinity to buy, really to find the relevance of an offer to a microsegmentation. Several examples of that is, for example, we found that someone who is within, say, 50 feet of a coffee shop at between 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the afternoon, when the temperature is 80 degrees, when all those conditions are fulfilled, has got a very high affinity to buy a cold coffee when an offer is pushed to them. So when those conditions are fulfilled and the predictive model actually suggests that this is a category or microsegmentation that's got a very high affinity to buy, that's when the content is pushed out. And that's, again, one example of how a lot of brands and retailers are pushing out relevant content using predictive models.
Great, thank you, everyone. I have another question here. It's a content question. So maybe somebody from Aprimo would want to chime in on this. How can retailers manage the large amounts of content they use across channels? I think managing is the key word in that question.
Right. So I think maybe I'll take that one. I think one of the first things we see is basically start establishing a single source of truth. So one record basically where everyone can go to basically. Now, as you can imagine, this is a lot of content going to go into this repository. So having good indexing, taxonomies, and tagging strategies to actually be able to find this, but also good ways of searching and slice and dice content for specific use cases is absolutely key. But also to provide and have sort of an open content model. We see, there's a lot of tends to be a very isolated use case. We come in basically and we see, look, we have a very isolated use case, and can we get everything going here? And we set it up. But over time, we will see new types of content, new types of media formats, new types of channels that we need to go. It's very important that you can take that into account when you set up this single source of truth, basically, that you can grow with it. And from this perspective, basically, when we have this all in place, let's start enriching content. Let's create this 360-degree view of product experience, if you wish, and add team members and process support to deliver those experiences, basically. So I would say, from managing perspective, start thinking single source of truth, structuring and having those findable and discoverable in your system, basically, would be key elements, basically.
Okay, great. Thank you. I have another question here. How important is it to include all information versus relevant information and risk customers abandoning for other websites? So I think the question is it's about data management. Shish, do you want to start with this one?
Well, I think it's a very thin line between, personalization and relevance, where, as mentioned earlier, there is a creepiness factor that's the danger, where you could be extremely relevant and personal, but there is that risk of getting too personal as well. So most brands typically try to create a good balance between, trying to be very relevant but not too personal. And today it is a bit of a struggle where if I'm very personal, very, very specific about what I offer and the content I give to the customer, I could potentially turn them away because they're creeped out. And I think that's a very, very thin line that many brands are trying to draw. At the same time, I think from a futures perspective, most customers are becoming more open, sharing more information in exchange for that relevance. And as that acceptance increases, we're going to see more brands really becoming more personal, more relevant, and shopping really, or rather that retail transformation happening where brands will predict exactly what you want before you even tell them.
Great, thank you, Shish. Did anyone else have any thoughts on that, or would you like to move on?
I'll just add, I mean, I think at the end of the day, we're all consumers as well. And so I think we have to look at our internal barometer to determine, as a consumer, would a certain level of personalized information, how would that make us feel if that were presented to us by a brand? And so again, because there is that thin line between the creep factor and just being personal and relevant, we really have to look at ourselves and say, okay, where should we draw that line? It's not just about throwing data at them and hoping that we get everything perfect, but really doing that analysis and gaining insights from the data that we have to provide them with content and information that is relevant, useful, and engaging for the customer.
Okay, excellent.
Yep.
All right, I'll go ahead and move on to the next one. This is a content question. Maybe, Jeffrey, you might want to start with this one. Often marketers are good at insights and content, but not so good in IT and technology. How do you achieve this practically? Can these two skills fit into one person?
I like to believe that the skills can fit in one person. I believe that, it starts with being able to map out the type of experience or journey that you want to create. And once you kind of know what that experience looks like, what that journey looks like, then the next level of it is to start investigating or researching the technologies that would support that. So, working in, companies together, we're all trying to achieve the same thing. So whether or not you need to reach out to the technology professionals in your organization to get their input on what technologies might support the experience or the journey that you're wanting to build, or you're doing the research yourself, I think it really just starts with knowing what it is you actually want to do. So I absolutely think that as marketers, we are able to take on the technology portion of bringing all of our visions to fruition. But again, we just have to start with knowing what it is we actually want to create.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Jeffrey. And I also think like what you see in practice when we have workshops doing customer journey mappings and stuff like that, it's actually pretty useful to have technology savvy people with specific perspective into those groups as well, because it's sort of, it's purely discussions and sort of the results and the alignment happens early on as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. Here's another question. Which channel do retailers have the most difficulty with, and why? One specific channel. Shish, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I would say mobile has been a tough one, at least from my conversations with retail, where one of the biggest challenges that they've identified with mobile is most customers are overwhelmed with the number of mobile apps out there. And creating a new mobile app has really, been a challenge, where they're saying, if as a brand I create another app and I throw it into the app store among the thousands of apps out there, what are the chances of that app being discovered? And even if it's discovered, what drives a customer to download and use that app? And that's the other challenge that many retail and brands are talking about. And once they download it, are they actually going to use it? The usage is the other challenge. So mobile apps are, again, a huge aspect of the challenge that many brands are looking at. And as a result, they're looking at alternatives. Today on mobile, what are the things that the customers actually use the most? And messaging turns out to be the #1 application. It doesn't matter which application it is, whether it is Skype or WhatsApp or Kik or any one of those. It varies, but messaging is the #1. And as a result, many brands are moving or gravitating towards engaging through messaging channels and delivering content through messaging channels. And that's that shift that is happening because of that huge challenge on mobile.
Okay, great. So we're getting close to the top of the hour. I'll just ask a couple more questions here. Are there any other retail transformations? We talked a little bit about transformation of retail and what to expect in 2018. I'm wondering if anyone else has any insights on some things they've seen, some things that are maybe less discovered. So the question is, are there any other retail transformations to expect in the near future? We can start with Jeffrey.
Of course you would. It's a good question. I mean, in the near future, I don't know how near, but again, I really think a lot of the focus is around convenience. Convenient commerce and bringing these partnerships with third-party products and services that you might not think of right off the bat. It really is about thinking outside of the box. So when we think about delivery options, a lot of companies are partnering with third-party delivering services to get, to be able to provide same-day shipping. So again, focusing on that convenience for the customer. How do you create this seamless experience interacting with you as a brand? I think that's where a lot of the focus will remain. That's where we'll see a lot more transition and transformation. An example, Domino's allowing for ordering pizzas through Facebook Messenger. So it's all of these things that, might not be kind of at the top of your mind. We really have to think outside the box of how do we make things very convenient and very easy for our customers to interact with us and to convert, for us to actually get the sale. So I think that in the near future, there's still going to be more transformation around how easy it is for customers to get our products.
Okay. Next.
For me, I think the biggest change. For me, the biggest change that I see in terms of transformation is around the word frictionless. I think that is really driving a lot of that transformation, where delivering a frictionless experience to customers is going to be what defines what that next transformation is going to be like. And I think what we've seen with Amazon Go, for example, the reason for the excitement was really that it was delivering a frictionless experience. The ability to use your phone camera to point at something and buy, that's again a frictionless experience. The ability to use your mobile device in a physical store and handle the payment through your mobile device, being able to scan products in store with your mobile device, again, is a frictionless experience. So I think a lot of the transformations that we're going to see in the near future will be really centered or pivoted around what's that frictionless experience we can deliver.
Yeah, I would add to that, and I think I agree completely. I think creating this frictionless experience, if you wish, is also about creating a really rich one that is standalone. I think we talked about it in the past in this call as well. I mean, having a really strong experience that we can sort of repurpose very easily and get it out in a different context, basically. Yeah. Now, one thing I'd like to add to this, and maybe we talk about transformations as well, is Now, if we have standalone product experience, how do we get it down to point of sale? And we also have more complex, maybe retail business models where we have franchise, or we have a distributor or a channel partner, and they need to have access to the relevant content for the latest version, with the latest experience, so they can easily get access to it basically through a portal and then sort of repurpose that for their specific shop or whatever. So I think that's where I see creating those experiences in a scalable, sustainable way, but actually getting out to every single and distributed to every single point of sale, basically.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. So it looks like we have about 5 minutes left until the top of the hour, so I just want to begin closing things out. I want to ask our speakers if they have anything else they'd like to share with the audience. Feel free to jump in now. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and move forward with closing things out. Okay.
I'll just add in. Sorry, I'll just add in that some of the things that I've said to some of the retailers that I've been working with. There's a lot of transformation in this space. There's a lot of challenges. It's a little scary for some, but we have to take this as an opportunity to get creative and to have fun with it again, because it really is a wide open space for retailers to be innovative, creative, disrupt the market, change things up, and that's fun. That's the fun stuff for marketers. So I hope everybody jumps up to the challenge and gets creative and continues to transform this space for all of us.
Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and move forward. Thank you, everyone. First of all, that's all the time we have for today's webinar. I want to take a moment to thank the audience for attending and thank our amazing speakers for participating. After the webinar, we would love to hear your feedback, so please participate in the survey and share any comments or suggested topics that you would like us to discuss in future webinars. This presentation will soon be available for on-demand view, and you will all receive the information to view the on-demand recording shortly, so keep an eye out for that. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsor, Aprimo, for a great event. To learn more about Aprimo and smart marketing performance, visit their website at www.aprimo.com. Thank you and have a great day.